The 2025 off-year elections were a disaster for the Republicans. We lost every important race of the night, or we were cheated out of it. Who can say in states where they let you vote by mail and don't require photo IDs? We lost in Virginia, in New Jersey, in Maine, in California, everywhere that important things were happening. We have a leftist CIA agent named Abigail Spanberger as the governor of Virginia. We have another leftist Democrat elected governor of New Jersey. We have a new red flag gun control referendum approved by voters in Maine, who also rejected a suggestion to put photo IDs, the same photo IDs they require you to show in order to buy alcohol, on the ballots. Voters rejected that. That's unpopular with voters. Having secure elections was rejected this election. We have Jay Jones, a truly despicable human being, who said he wanted to shoot his political opponents in the head and wished death on their children, elected the Attorney General of Virginia. And we have Zohran Mamdani, an anti-American, anti-Western Ugandan Muslim, and open communist, elected mayor of New York City, chomping at the bit to implement his Stalinist economic agenda, and go even easier on violent criminals than the city of New York already is. It was a very bad night, in short. The forces of evil and of civilizational collapse triumphed yet again at the ballot box. But on the bright side, we can all hope that this disaster was a heavy enough blow to hammer through Republicans' thick skulls some very important lessons. But only time will tell whether this debacle will result in a miracle like that. In the meantime, even if our always disappointing, always ineffective Republican leaders didn't learn anything, we still can. The base still can. Your everyday conservatives still can. There are some very important takeaways we can draw from this that can help us to avoid this happening again. Some realizations that Republicans need to come to, some realities we need to wake up to, some changes in strategy and in focus that need to happen. And we're going to go through a few of them today. The first takeaway, and the most important takeaway, is that the left really does want you and your family dead. You need to wake up to that reality. This should have been something we all learned when Charlie Kirk was assassinated in front of the world and tens of thousands of leftists openly celebrated his death and spat in his grieving widow's face. But for those of us who haven't woken up to this reality yet, this is a good reminder of that. How can I possibly say such a thing? Look at the guy 53% of Virginians just thronged to the polls to enthusiastically elect the Attorney General of their state, Jay Jones. 2 bullets, Jay Jones. And in case you're unaware of what that 2 bullets nickname is referring to, wonder no more. Just to remind everyone, here's what Jay Jones, the Attorney General-elect of Virginia, texted to a Republican, yes, a Republican colleague of his, about Todd Gilbert, the Republican Speaker of the House of Delegates in Virginia. Here's what he said, quote, 3 people, 2 bullets. Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew with the 2 worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. The Republican he texted asked him to stop repeatedly, but he wouldn't. When she confronted him about openly wishing that he hoped Todd Gilbert's would be forced to watch his children die, how do you think he responded? Just guess. if you haven't heard yet. Did he deny that he ever said that he wanted Todd Gilbert's children to die? No, he couldn't do that because it was on record. Did he apologize for saying it? Of course he didn't apologize. That would require a basic level of shame and self-awareness and a shred of humanity that J. Jones simply does not possess. So instead, he responded this way, quote, "Yes, I've told you this before. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. I mean, do I think Todd and Jennifer are evil and that they're breeding little fascists? Yes." This, of course, should have instantly disqualified J. Jones from running to become the Attorney General, the overseer of law enforcement in Virginia. Every Virginia Democrat should have denounced him and called for him to drop out of the race, as well as we all know that every Republican would do that. If a Republican running for office texted anything anywhere close to this disgusting. But they didn't. They didn't see these obviously damning messages as disqualifying in any way, because they agree with them and they endorse them, and so do 52.8% of Virginia voters. The entire Democrat Party, essentially, supports this rhetoric, supports this guy, and voted for him. Left-leaning independents support this rhetoric, support this guy, and voted for him. Understand how important this is. Understand what this tells us about the state of our country. Support for violence against conservatives is not a radical fringe view on the left. It's not limited to Antifa militants and a couple of random online trolls on Blue Sky. 53% of Virginians just hired this monster with homicidal inclinations who flirts with daydreams of murdering conservatives and their children to oversee law enforcement for their state, to be the Attorney General. And that fact should make you stop in your tracks. It should tell you who your enemies really are. Your enemy is not Tucker Carlson because he has a different foreign policy view than you do. Your enemy is not the so-called woke right that's actually more conservative than a lot of people are, like all the most pathetic loser cons like James Lindsay are telling you, smearing everyone as woke right who's to the right of them. Those people are not your enemy. This is your enemy. The left is your enemy. The people who want you dead are your enemy. The second takeaway is related to the first in a way. The left is far more radical than ever before. There are 0 sane people left on the left in the year of our Lord 2025. Maybe there were in 1990 or in 2001 if you're an older person listening to this, but newsflash, it's not 2003 anymore. We live in a completely different universe. The world has changed in fundamental ways. It's not Republicans versus Democrats in anything other than a technical sense anymore. We're not talking about tax rates and environmental regulations and GDP growth charts anymore. This is a civilizational war between all-out communists and all non-communists. The conservative movement is just a coalition, a very fragile coalition, of all the people in the country who would prefer not to live in Soviet Russia in the year 1930. How can I say that? Look at what just happened in New York. An anti-American Muslim Ugandan named Zohran was just elected by New Yorkers to be in charge of one of the largest and most important cities in the United States. He openly admits to being a socialist, is completely unashamed of it, and has a socialist plan to forcibly regulate prices and rent and wages, and centrally plan the entire economy of New York City. The Democrat Party was already effectively a socialist party, and we all know that. That's why our economy is in hell right now, in case you haven't noticed. So this guy just wants to put out a fire with gasoline instead of water. In 1950, when we actually took communist infiltration of the United States seriously, no one would have tolerated a communist like Zohran Mamdani being elected mayor of one of the largest cities in the world. No one would have voted for this. But because the status quo Democrat and the status quo conservative uniparty has destroyed our economy and our country so much, it's pushing leftists into all-out communism instead of pushing them to realize that maybe they should go in the opposite direction, the direction of the free markets, to solve these economic problems. The third takeaway is that the Great Replacement is real and it's worse than you ever imagined. For all that people might be fixating on how Zohran Mamdani is a socialist, which is a real problem and a very serious problem, that is not the worst problem, at least I don't think, because New York was already effectively a quasi-socialist regime. The worst part, the most humiliating part, the most insulting part to this country and to the people who live here, the worst part is that a Ugandan Muslim has conquered New York City. Our immigration crisis is so bad that not only is the American population being replaced by foreigners, not only is our culture dying and our cities becoming cesspools of third world dysfunction, not only is America ceasing to be American, it's so bad that foreigners with an anti-Christian, anti-Western agenda, who share nothing in common with us, are conquering our cities without a fight, without even peaceful laws to try to stop them from doing it. We're just sitting back and letting this happen. And that's what really gets me. We're doing nothing about it at all except deporting a very small number of illegal aliens that isn't even making a dent in this massive migration crisis that's killing the West. Zohran Mamdani does not share any history or heritage or traditions or culture or values or religion or anything else that makes people countrymen and makes having a nation possible with actual Americans. He comes from Uganda, which is a poverty-stricken, dysfunctional, failed state. And there are so many foreigners living in New York City, along with so many emotionally blackmailed white leftist women who have been brainwashed into thinking they're never allowed to take their own side on anything ever, that this is the guy who New Yorkers have elected to be in charge of their city. But it's not just the white women, they're a drop in the ocean. It is mostly the foreigners. They're responsible for this. According to a recent poll that was done before the election, Zohran Mamdani had 62% of foreigners living in New York City supporting him, and Cuomo had just 24% among the foreign demographic. But among native-born New Yorkers, among actual Americans, Cuomo would have received 40% of the vote, and Mamdani just 32% of the vote. This is what we've allowed to happen to our country. Foreigners are controlling our elections. This is the result not only of Biden letting so many people into our country, it's also a result of Republicans' stupid attitude that only illegal immigration is bad and that legal immigration is good for America. That's a lie. That's insane. Clearly, our problem is not that the immigrants here don't have a piece of paper from the government that says they're okay to be here. That's a problem. It's a crime not to have that piece of paper. It's a crime not to have permission to be here. So all of these people are criminals, but that's nowhere close to being the main problem. The real problem is that so many immigrants are here at all. I don't care if these people are legal or illegal. We just can't let in so many of them. It is unacceptable to let in so many foreigners that they become the kingmakers in New York City's elections. It is unacceptable that a third world Muslim socialist is about to become the mayor of New York City, even though he's here legally. That is not an acceptable situation. And you can call that racist and xenophobic if you want. I don't care. You can call it whatever you want. I would just like America to continue to exist as a country if that's okay with you. I would prefer for the America that my ancestors, and probably a lot of people's ancestors, have lived in for centuries, to stay American. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to want, and I don't care if other people don't. The fourth takeaway is that conservatives need to focus their energy on fighting and defeating the left and not at attacking each other. That might sound like a lame centrist platitude, some stupid GOP Inc. talking point, but it's actually not, because this is not a problem that you really have with the more radical right-wingers. This is 100% on the moderates, actually. This is 100% on the neocons. The so-called centrists in the anti-Marxist coalition, a lot of them have just been acting as agents of division and strife within the conservative movement. Just look at the insane outrage cycle we had last week over a podcast Tucker Carlson did. What are we fixating on? What are we spending all of our energy on? Attacking Tucker Carlson and calling him an anti-Semitic Nazi for interviewing Nick Fuentes. That's priority number one for so many people. Screaming at Tucker and calling him an anti-Semite, calling him a racist, in other words, like the pathetic little BLM race hustlers these people are, just repackaged as conservatives, for having a foreign policy disagreement. That's what this is about. This is what we've been talking about for a week, is foreign policy disagreements, and it is insane. So let me just ask you a question. For just 10 seconds, can we shut up about Israel and foreign policy and talk about, I don't know, the third world invasion of our country, for starters? Talk about the Muslim communists taking over our cities? Apparently we can't. Apparently that's just too much to ask. This is what George Washington warned us about in his farewell address. Our country is being destroyed. We can only save it if we fight against our common enemies, but instead we're too busy bickering about foreign policy. It's satire. It's a cartoon, is what it is. We live in a cartoon clown world. If we spent half the effort fighting the left, just half of it, as we spend going at each other's throats and stabbing our most important allies, like Tucker Carlson or Matt Walsh or whoever the neocon pitchfork mob's target of the week happens to be at the moment, in the back, then our country would not be on the brink of destruction right now. If you people could be half as angry at, I don't know, the systematic mass murder of 60 million unborn children as you are at a racist joke in a group chat, maybe less of those babies would be dead right now. If we could be a serious political movement for 5 seconds capable of maintaining the most basic level of unity, none of this would be happening. Maybe 10% of your energy goes to fighting the left at most for a lot of these people. So how about we reverse that ratio? How about you spend 90% of your energy fighting the people who happen to want to kill you instead of fighting Tucker Carlson? Or better yet, how about 100% of your energy goes to fighting the left. Because whether you like it or not, the right has moved on from the days of Mitt Romney and George W. Bush. And you can say both sides are bad, but there's no comparison, zero comparison whatsoever between the radical right and the radical left. Let me explain the difference, because this is a very important thing to understand. The left wants to destroy this country. Tucker Carlson does not. So maybe these people can stop, think for a second, and say, hey, maybe you have a different foreign policy position than me. But you know what? We both agree killing babies is wrong. We both agree castrating kids is wrong. We both agree marriage is between a man and a woman. We both agree on the basics. And these people want to kill both of us. So maybe we should call a truce and focus on defeating them. Then we can sort this all out. Then we could actually win. This is all it takes. All it takes is for people to take a breath, count to 10 like a big boy, swallow their pride, put aside their swollen egos, and get over themselves. The fifth and final takeaway is that Republicans need to start getting things done. In case you forgot, which who can blame you, you wouldn't know it by the state of our country, by the headlines we're reading, we currently control the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the presidency. If we wanted to, for example, pass a federal ban on gender transitions for minors, because people probably think a ban on transitions for adults is too radical at this point, we could do that. If we saw a problem, like the problem that thousands of children are being sterilized and castrated and mutilated in this country, and we wanted to solve that problem by passing a law that every Republican would vote for or lose his career in both houses, and that Trump would obviously sign, we could pass it. If we wanted to pass an election integrity law, we could do that. If we wanted to kick up deportations a notch, we could do that. If we wanted to cut taxes, we could do that. If we wanted to actually try to make the lives of Americans better, we could do that. We can actually solve problems. Did you know that? We're allowed to. We're allowed to solve problems and to get things done. That's actually possible. But we haven't been. We've been squandering this precious golden window of opportunity, fighting each other and getting nothing done. We've sealed the border. That's good. We got a ceasefire in Gaza, which is good, even though it's already being violated, but that's a start. We've deported some illegal aliens, not nearly enough, but some. All those things are good, but it's not nearly enough. The golden age is not upon us. Sorry to burst your bubble, sorry to be the storm cloud, but it's not. We won an election in 2024. Then we lost the next year's election, miserably. In a year, we haven't achieved much of anything. It's been disappointment after disappointment, with just a couple wins. We need to reverse this. We need to wake up every single day like communists could take over the government in just 3 years and ruin our lives and usher in a Soviet dystopia, because they could, and there's a very good chance they will. We need to wake up every single day like we have a country to save from destruction, because we do. We need to wake up every single day like the survival of civilization itself depends upon us, because it does.